Welcome to the Exploring Awareness podcast. Join Dr. Frank Anderson and Lisa Berry in exploring new ways to live in this chaotic world and find peace and joy in the most unlikely places.
Hi, and welcome to the Exploring Awareness podcast. I'm Lisa Berry here with Dr. Frank Anderson.
We're on episode 52.
Still sort of in a pandemic, although it's fading out, should we say, just to mark this time in history?
Yes, we're at the point where masks aren't required if you're vaccinated.
Right.
And so I've been seeing everyone's faces. It's so interesting.
It's funny you should say that. I was at a store the other day and a guy was behind me and I turned around and I smiled. I go, hey, you can see that I'm smiling at you because, you know, for wearing masks, nobody knew that you were smiling at them or perhaps not smiling at them, but it was a moment. Now that you mentioned that, we had a moment. He's like, I'm smiling and you can see it. Yay.
Yes. I was at Costco and people didn't have their masks on. And I just remember that being a big deal, wearing masks there.
Right.
So many people wearing masks. And it just, things feel lighter. Things feel better.
Well, in the area where we live, Ann Arbor, Michigan, in the United States, because, you know, people live all over the world, there are some amazing gardens around here. And one of them is the University of Michigan has a peony garden. And I have gone to visit it at least 6 times this spring because I think it's like 800 plants and thousands of blooms all in one spot. And it's my cathedral. It's just my go-to place to relax and take it all in and kind of live in a place of awe, which is where I try to live. I try not to take anybody or anything for granted. I try to live in a place of awe.
Awe of peonies. And I just want to stop for a second and just, the flower type is peonies.
Peonies for plural. And I know they're big in lots of countries. I believe in China, it's a big deal.
Yes. I don't know actually, but there's so many different varieties and there's so many different shapes and sizes and colors. And it just creates, like you said, this amazing and spectacular burst of color that you're talking about. It puts you in a sense of awe. And as we've been talking about that, having the ability to be present to things like that might be what is the mechanism or the how to achieve awe. Now, I've been in places before, like when I was at the Louvre in France, and people kind of walk by and they say, oh, there's a Mona Lisa, and they go on.
No.
Yes. Or
really?
Some of those, see Europe in 10 days
oh, boy.
From a bus window. There's different ways you go about life. And this podcast is about exploring awareness and being present. So what do you think is that the relationship between being present and your experience in the peonies garden?
Well, even when I go for a walk in my neighborhood, I walk out the door and I immediately try to just take it all in that moment. You can go for a walk and you can ruminate about your problems or you can not be in that moment. But that's a whole point of doing it to me, is to walk out the door and start looking at the trees and just being in that moment and seeing the trees and how lush and green everything is right now, and walking to, there's some woods at the end of my street and looking at how the sun makes a shadow on the trees. Have you ever done that? It's amazing how the light can make a shadow on a tree. So I try to stop and take it all in. So at that moment, I'm just taking all that in and aware of what's happening right in front of me. Have
you been to the peonies garden with some other friends?
Okay. All right. So the Peonies Garden in Ann Arbor, Michigan is my cathedral. I go there and it takes my breath away. And so I wanted to share it with some people this year. I thought that was, I like to connect and I like to be with people. So I went with 3 different people to the Peony Garden in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And they weren't as in awe or in the moment as I was. Let's just put it that way. And I was kind of like, all right, you're not coming back. You're not coming back. And I'll tell you, I was with a guy. He's an artist. He's a well-known area artist. And there's this tree. And I call it the tree of life because its branches go in all these different directions. And we just get to the garden and we walk up this hill and I go, look at this tree. I call it the tree of life because its branches go in so many different directions. And he goes, I wonder how many dogs have peed on that tree. So I guess maybe he was in the moment, but like, no, we're not here to think of that. We're here to awe in the wonder of nature. And look how this tree grew and its branches go. So yeah. And then I went with other people and everybody had their own little scenario they brought to my beloved garden. And I thought, okay, I'm going by myself next time.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Sometimes different people have different experiences with things. And, we're so used to thinking and analyzing and judging.
Right.
And evaluating. And, I find myself as a physician frequently doing that, right? Because, presenting with different situations. And, when we do the Healer's Art course too at the University of Michigan and that was designed by Rachel Renan, who wrote the book Kitchen Table Wisdom. Okay. And she developed a course called the Healer's Art course. And session 4 of that course is all about allowing awe in medicine. And so we work with the students and let them talk about things that maybe don't make intellectual sense, right? Things that happen in people's lives, birth and death and cures and things that we can't explain, right? That just take us back and allow that to happen as opposed to evaluate it or try to dismiss it. I think it's so interesting because every year we have the different faculty share their experiences of awe and how they experience awe in medicine. And it always strikes me that to do that, one of the prerequisites is that you allow yourself to be in the present moment and allow what's happening to happen and to live with the event that life is presenting you, right? Without resistance, without trying to change it, and without trying to analyze it. And in that presence, the awe then becomes an overwhelming feeling of kind of connection. Wouldn't you say that sense of awe? But allowing it is the first step, and allowing it may come from these meditation practices and this idea of exploring awareness.
I think that is exactly how I would describe my experience in this garden. But I am really curious in the medical world, if you could talk more about how you experience awe, because I think people think doctors are scientists and it's so precise and you have problem A, we're going to give you cure B. And you're saying that there's room for awe in medicine. Are we talking like medical miracles or what are you talking about?
Well, medical miracles may be one of those things, but even just to stop and, I've talked about childbirth before.
Right.
And it could be routine, right? It can be something that happens
for maybe you, the doctor, but not for those.
Well, I have attended over 10,000 births.
Wow.
And if you're not careful, you can get burned out and forget that each of these births is an absolute amazing experience. And I think because I've been practicing all these years, meditation and presence, and as I've gotten older too, I've gotten better at that. And then enjoy not just the delivery, but the mother's joy and the father's joy and the grandparents' joy and the nurse's joy, and the baby's entrance into life and its first breaths. It's just absolutely amazing every single time. It's just a privilege. It's an absolute privilege.
See, that sounds like awareness to me, that you have to be aware in that moment of the miracle that's happening before you.
That's always what we're talking about in this podcast is the how. Because some people may not be in awe of things. Like, your friends who went to the Peonies garden, they weren't in awe of all those amazing flowers and the shapes and colors and and what that all means, because, maybe they haven't been practicing. Not to say there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but what we are saying here is that there is an opportunity, right, to really connect at a deeper level in the present moment to what's going on. And it isn't something that, you can force, but it's something that emerges from being present. And so this podcast is always about being present and what happens in the present moment. I'm remembering Shinzen Young, who talked about mindfulness, and he said, if you could live to be 200 years old and, with the same quality of life, would you want to do that? And people will say, sure, if I don't get sick, if I can live 200 years, the same quality of life, that would be wonderful. He says, well, I can't help you do that. But what I can help you do is live your 80, 90, 100 years in a much richer, much more present way. So it seems like your life is twice or 3 times as rich because you're not missing everything. So with these mindfulness techniques, the depth of your experience becomes much, much more, through these mindfulness techniques. And so then you get to walk into a peony's garden and experience the wonder and awe and mystery of that whole experience.
Could we say, like we say, the joy is always there and the peace is always there and the love is always there? Is the awe always there? We have that capacity to look at life that way?
I really think so. I think that awe can be found in even the most mundane things,
Right. I agree.
Like a brick.
Well, we hadn't seen each other in over a year due to the pandemic, and I found another garden in the Ann Arbor area it's called White Lotus Farms, and they have several fields of poppies, red poppies mixed with these blue flowers. And they had posted a picture of it. I thought, well, I got to go see that. And so you just happened to be free and you met me there. And I do want to thank you because you allowed me to have my moment of awe. And I didn't have to worry that you were going to think, why is she so my heart stops, it's just amazing to me. And I take it all in and I feel it and it moves me. And you allowed that to happen and you didn't say anything to take that away from me. So I was really grateful that you didn't, and that we could have that experience of awe together.
Yeah, that didn't even cross my mind. The poppy field, there was like poppies and blue buttons and huge field of those red poppies and those blue flowers. And it was wonderful. There's this opportunity, right, to just be in the present moment and experience that. And one of our last episodes was on unity, and you just get this sense of the connectedness of all things and the beauty of all things. And, as a scientist, I always think about DNA and how this DNA in this plant is different than this DNA in this plant, and this is why it expresses differently. And that type of amazing wonder to me is like absolutely incredible, that you can just have these little shifts in DNA that have this huge differences in expression. And that's a wonder and awe that I just can never get over. I like that with the different types of fish and different breeds of chickens. How I love chickens and flowers and all these different things that have all these beautiful different colors, birds. It's just absolutely amazing. And by practicing these awareness techniques, right, life becomes so rich and so interesting. It's not just about trying to make it to the next place, or trying to make the next dollar. There's just so much. Life can be so much more interesting, very subtle, very beautiful, very delicate, very interesting.
To me, there's awe in everything. If you stop and take the time and are aware, you can find awe in everything, I think. So I'm standing there and I say, why do I feel this way? It's just like overwhelming to me how beautiful it is. And capturing my heart. And you said something along the lines of, well, you need to have that same feeling when you're looking at a brick.
It's true. And well, here's something that Adyashanti says, excerpted from The Most Important Thing, Discovering Truth at the Heart of Life, which is one of his books. And he says, right down to the most ordinary events in life, everything is much more extraordinary than we give it credit for. To engage with the true nature of ourselves, with the mysterious and overwhelming quality of existence, requires us to pay attention, to be present, and to not sleepwalk through the next moment and the next day and the next week and the next year. It requires us to endeavor to bring an even deeper sense of consciousness and awareness to each moment. And when we do, the quality of our consciousness itself transforms our whole being.
That reminds me of something that you say almost every time we record a podcast, that, you have a choice. You can just walk through life and not be aware of what you're thinking or what's happening and just be on autopilot and be who you are based on how you were conditioned or brought up or where you're from. Or you can be aware of the moment and kind of dig through those layers and get back to your core of joy and peace and love.
Exactly right. And I am also saying that if you've been doing that, it's also okay, because once you become aware of it, that's where the interesting part starts. So some young people stop sleepwalking, early on, and they really, really engage life. And sometimes it takes a longer time for people. So what if you do recognize that you've been sleepwalking? It's important then to have compassion for yourself and not be too hard on yourself, because that's another thing that can happen with this, right? Have you ever experienced that?
Being hard on myself? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
my gosh.
Hard on yourself when you become aware, of what's going on. Have you been hard on yourself or judging yourself for that? Because I know I have.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm still trying to figure out why it's so hard not to do that. I literally am to the point now where I'll stop. Lisa, listen to how you're talking to yourself, and would you talk to your kids that way? Or would you talk to somebody you really care about, a friend or a loved one, that way? No, I wouldn't. And so why can't I, be kind to myself? Why is it so hard?
Yeah. So it's such a common experience of, again, the habitual mind doing kind of judging, maybe like your parents judge you or somebody else judge you. So it's like, wow. So now I'm aware that I'm doing that to myself again. Here I'm trying to explore awareness. And then it's like, now I'm aware that I'm judging myself very harshly. Right. So then you can bring that into awareness. And so the whole process continues to evolve that way. It isn't something fast, but I always love to talk about the how, right? Because you just can't walk in a peony's garden and be in awe necessarily. There might need to be that prep, that how, that practicing awareness, perhaps in a meditation setting at home or just in a chair, by being first aware of your breath. That's how you get practice of being aware. First, being aware of your breath, then your body. Then you can be aware of your thoughts and your emotions and your consciousness. Then you start connecting to things in the present moment, and that sense of awe starts to emerge, like that sense of unity that we talked about, I think, in episode number 50.
And I think in this situation, when you're trying to be aware of self-compassion, I think we need to hear more. What does that look like? So you stop and you're aware. Oh, I'm beating myself up again. And my go-to phrase is, Lisa, give yourself a break. So if I stop and I become aware and I need some self-compassion, and then I'm aware of that, how does it fall off? Does that come through repetition or practice or awareness or all of the above?
Tara Brach has a little saying about that. It's called Tend and Befriend.
I never heard that one.
Yeah, tend to befriend. So it's like, okay, you've got that going. You've got these scripts going, these like mind memes that just continue and continue. And then
Right.
when you stop to become aware, now remember that we've talked about some of these deep qualities that emerge when you practice awareness. So there's that sense of equanimity or peace. There's a sense of unconditional love, a sense of joy, and a sense of generosity. And so it's from that wellspring of intention that you draw upon to have self-compassion for yourself. When you see this part of you that is acting up, part of you that sees is where the love emerges from, right? So it isn't like another thought. Oh, well, I got to love myself. I mean, you're expressing this tolerance for yourself. But what I would like to suggest is that you feel into a non-judgmental accepting of whatever's happening in the present moment, right? And when you do that, there's that sense of love and relief and joy that the present moment is pure awareness and has nothing to do with the thoughts and the judgments. And that's where the love comes from, the compassion comes from.
You talk about that often about you can't, there's no words for it. You just have to feel it.
Right. That you feel into it. And so, Adyashanti has another something to say about this, because this is all about being conscious, right? Conscious awareness. And so he says that consciousness gives us this unique facility not only to be aware, but also to be aware that we are aware, and we can reflecting on things. And so what's happening is that the cosmos, he calls it, is reflecting upon itself, right? So when we look at this mystery, spiritual awakening or revelation itself, it will show that we, in the deepest sense of things, are the mystery that we're looking at.
I loved that. We are the mystery that we're looking at. Isn't that amazing?
It really, really is. And that becomes a big sense of awe in that we are these particles of the universe, right? And we're aware of it, and we are aware that we are aware. And it's in that awareness that the universe is aware of itself. I know that sounds like a deep concept, but
stick with us.
It's and I put it out there as, not something to be judged and not something to be, kind of dismissed, but to just put it out there as a possibility. It can make intellectual sense. Yes, we're all just particles of the universe, but the awe is that the particles are arranged in such a way that we can be aware of it, or aware that we're aware. And so this is the deepest sense of consciousness, the deepest expression of kind of life. And the fact that we can do that is the most awe-inspiring thing of all.
And are you aware you sent me this Adyashanti writing this morning, and that was the exact quote that I sent back to you? That was my favorite of the whole thing.
Yeah, right.
In the deepest sense of things are the mystery that we are looking at. And I thought that resonated with me a lot. And I thought, how beautiful is that? It is kind of a mystery. And that's, to me, why I enjoy awe, because it's focusing on the mystery of life, really. Taking a moment to stop and take it in. Stop and take it in.
Exactly. And
there's so much to take in.
Yeah, and so it's a different perspective on things. It's an openness, an
Mhm.
open heartedness that again is revealed or through these practices or cultivated, through the practices that we've been talking about, the exploring awareness, the mindfulness, the presence. And so again, from another angle, and we talk about the same thing every episode from different angles.
Right.
And today we're talking about the experience of awe that we've all had, right? Sometimes it takes a lot to shock you into awe. So, these people you went to the peonies garden with, that wasn't enough. I would say that, I always love to bring my Burning Man experience references into this too, because boy, people create some amazing artwork and amazing experiences and amazing shows that just really are awe-inspiring. It's like you can't imagine people coming up with this, especially out in the middle of nowhere like they do. Sometimes you have to have a big dramatic event to like experience awe, like stop, and you have no choice but to be in the present moment with your mouth open. I'm like, OMG.
So I don't know why I want to ask you this question, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Do you think awe is easy?
Yes, it becomes just a normal part of the day.
For me, and like you were, but like you were saying, I don't need a big event to bring me awe. I can find awe in everything, and that's why I call myself a moment savorer, because there's so much to savor and there's so much to take in. And I think life and the human body is a miracle. And when I say that to people, they just look at me like, "What are you talking about?" But I try to live in awe and awareness as much as I can, because I think life is such a gift and it goes by so fast, and I want to savor it and remember it and not be on autopilot. I want to take it all in because there is so much to take in. So for me, awe is easy, but I didn't know if for other people it is, and it
No,
wasn't.
it's not. It's not easy for everyone, and that's why we're talking about it today. Because I think some people don't experience awe, and that's okay too. And I think that the reason to kind of listen today and to practice is to cultivate that and work on it. And I wouldn't want to judge anybody for
No,
their
right.
level of awe that they have or don't have. But I would like to say that awe does become part of this experience. And with the practice and with the working with it, then awe starts to emerge in the most unusual places. Your children, your spouse, your neighborhood, your job. Even places where you didn't think there was awe.
A brick.
A brick, an interesting brick or a not interesting brick. Being present and just connecting to the present moment and what is has so much potential. And today we've been talking about awe as one of those expressions that we as humans, have when we are in the present moment. So let's move to a kind of experience two of that, because the conversations are interesting, but the how to experience awe is connecting to your innate sense of presence that is distracted by so many ideas and thoughts and things. And if you just stop now to connect and to presence first by being aware of your breath, and reminding yourself, it's like, oh yeah, this is breathing happening in my body. It's happening without me thinking about it. And now I'm being aware of it. And it starts my awareness practice, my mindfulness practice, or my mindful awareness practice. Mindful mindfully aware of the breath. And, as we start out this practice, it's hard enough just to keep your attention on the breath. But the more you do that, the easier it gets. And the easier it gets, the more you can explore what happens when you breathe. And, it's amazing, really, that muscles, all over your body move when you breathe. And tissues stretch and skin stretches in your legs and your back and your neck. And you could just spend a whole hour exploring all the different amazing things that happen when you breathe. And that may be awe-inspiring. And you can feel it. I can feel it in my hips. I can feel it all up and down my back, not just my nose. So there's all that, physical exploration you could do. And then, of course, what's truly amazing and awe-inspiring is that you're breathing in air that, and the air is full of different types of molecules. And oxygen is the most important one. It's going into your lungs and dissolving across a membrane and attaching to hemoglobin and being delivered to your cells so that they can undergo the metabolic, requirements that are necessary. And then that oxygen is going to get put onto some carbon because of these, complex biochemical processes that if you go to medical school, you'll study, ad nauseum. Super complicated, super interesting. I mean, awe-inspiring that even people could figure this out. And the carbon dioxide, it's in a liquid form until it gets back to the lungs, and then it turns into a gas molecule, and it comes out of into your lung sacs and out. And just to be present to that is amazing. I mean, that could be the most awe-inspiring thing of the day. Just to stop to realize what's happening in your lungs with this air. And then if it messes up for just a short time, the whole chemistry of your body will be thrown off. If you don't have enough oxygen, your life could be over in a few minutes. Or if the carbon dioxide builds up. So all of these incredibly balanced processes are being expressed in how often you breathe and how deep you breathe and whether or not you yawn. And so just be awed by the whole thing. Connect to this as a deeper reality of what's really going on. And the fact that you're aware of it. And that you're aware of it. What does that do? Breathing is simple compared to what's going on in our bodies with muscles, bones, and nerves, keeping our muscles toned and keeping us upright and balanced, and knowing our position in space, and all of these incredibly complicated neurological, chemical things going on just to keep us sitting. And sensing the environment and feeling, your skin touching the floor or your clothes or whatever. And so not just being aware of the body as muscles and nerves, but as an incredibly intricate system that's actually tied up with your breathing, and which maintains the pH of your blood, which maintains the normal functioning of the muscles and the nerves. So it's very connected. And of course, the blood flow through arteries and veins coursing throughout your body. Miles and miles of blood vessels that contract and dilate based on the need for blood in different places, and absorbing nutrients from your intestines, passing through your kidneys to release all the toxins and metabolic byproducts. Countless things happening that it really takes multiple PhDs to really understand completely. But here we're just being in awe of what's happening in the body from the being aware and allowing the mystery just to be there, even if we can't really understand it. It deepens the awareness, deepens the connection. And then moving up to the brain, now a whole nother level of complication. And the brain has evolved. Our brains have evolved. And they look physically different than other animals. But we are, of course, animals, primates, evolved primates whose brains have evolved to the place where we're not just autopilot. I think a lot of organisms are. Autopilot, and they've learned cause and effect and things, but since we can't talk to them, we don't know what else they can do. But we know that we, one level, can just function as a robot and like an animal. You can just seek to get your needs met, compete to get your needs met. At whatever costs you want, and you can, please other people and do what you think is right based on what other people say. So there's all that, and you can just function at that level. And there's this opportunity now to function a little bit deeper, a little bit at another level that doesn't get taught so much. So we're exploring that here, this waking up from ourselves as just habitual kind of creatures to being aware of what is making us tick, aware of how our thoughts are formed, aware of our reactions. Aware of a inner dimension that goes beyond just trying to get needs met or trying to find favor with others, but now a connection to a deeper sense of identity beyond thoughts. But it's through the mindful awareness that we can connect to this. Because it won't be a thought, it will be a experience of connection to the mystery and awe that is beyond thought and beyond our conscious existence. And even if your brain is just skeptical and dismissive of this whole thing, you're aware that your brain is dismissive and skeptical, and it's in the awareness that you'll find the answers to these unanswerable problems and unanswerable questions. Because this, in the awareness, sometimes the questions no longer mean anything. But again, you'll have to just sit with that experience. And be compassionate with yourself as you kind of struggle in between trying to figure things out and letting the present moment unfold. And as you do that, you connect to awe and mystery. And openness, joy and peace and love and generosity. And you get distracted and you go back to the breath and become aware of the breath anytime you want. Aware of the body, aware of thoughts, aware of your emotions. Rest as awareness. And then feel into the awareness of awareness. The unity of all beings. And the awe that comes with that. And then perhaps gratitude that we have such a practice, such a access to this. From people who have done this already. And so we'll end now with a couple of breaths, a couple of awe-inspiring breaths. And you can open your eyes and be awed by your vision. And we can hear Lisa and be awed by her voice.
That was a lot to take in. I don't know, I know you kind of get into the moment and the flow and you do your meditations, but wow, I'm kind of listening and, going along with it, but that was a lot to take in a good way. I was in awe. Let's just put it that way. How about that? I was in awe of that meditation.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is a lot. And, it requires, just again, some patience and openness. And truly, the opportunities just continue deep in all the time. And to me, this never gets boring.
No, I know.
Never.
Yep.
If it gets boring, then it's more thought-based, So it's like keep working on and go back to the breath. But it's fun and it's a good thing to do if you're picking it up. Pick it up with us. Keep working with us. Have fun with it.
We haven't mentioned Big Fun Journey in a while.
Oh yeah, Big Fun. Totally.
Part of our Big Fun Journey.
This is a Big Fun journey. If you got to go to a psychotherapist for some, work through some pain, that's one thing. But this is a Big Fun journey.
Here you go. Oh my gosh.
Therapist, have some fun with us.
Yeah, right. There you go. Well, it's kind of like therapy. Every episode you say something that like hits me right where I am. And I'm hoping it hits everybody listening right where they are. We're all on this universal journey together.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like an examined life, it's worth living.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to email us, exploringawareness@gmail.com. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter.
Yes, please leave us a message or send us an email. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Have a great week, everybody, and have a big fun journey and enjoy the awe of everything.
This podcast is not an attempt to practice medicine or provide specific medical advice, nor does use of this information establish a physician-patient relationship. Listening to this podcast does not replace medical consultation with a qualified health or medical professional to meet the health and medical needs of you or others. If you are having problems, please see your primary care provider or your local mental health professional.